What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talk of the Tundra. We are stressfully joining you after the Green Bay Packers squeaked out a win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Joining me again this week is Ty. Ty Windish, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad the Packers got the win. They really made sure the whole game would be entertaining after early. It looked like, maybe we could coast to a W. Not the case. Not the case in Tampa Bay, but a win on the road against a very good team is always something to feel good about, I think.
The sigh of relief that came once I saw the ball hit the ground after Devondre tipped it was incredible. We're gonna
I
start.
was I was eagle-eyed looking for flags, by the way.
Oh
After
yeah,
some of the whistles that Tampa got, I was like, man, do we have to redo this play? I do not feel good about that. But thankfully, none to be found.
I was like as low as you can get in the half second between Devondre tipping the ball and the ball hitting the ground because I saw that was like Russell Gage, whoever the target was on that throw, was on the ground where the ball was gonna land. I went, there's no shot. There's no shot this ball is gonna land right in his lap after he falls down and like, oh, it would have been one of those kind of games for that to happen. Luckily it didn't. 14-12, the Packers win. And Ty, we probably should start right there with the defense. 12 points to a Tom Brady led team. Pretty good. Pretty good, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say very good, especially on the road in Tampa, in Florida, a place where typically Aaron Rodgers does not play great. He played better than some games in Florida, but we'll get to the Rodgers and the offense. Defensively, there's literally outside of an injury that we'll talk about, there's nothing more you could ask for from a defense than what Green Bay's defense came through and did Thursday, or not Thursday, Sunday afternoon. I don't know where Thursday came from. Sunday afternoon on this game, the Battle of the Bays that Green Bay came out victorious. Between holding the run game, keeping the run game entirely in check. And, per carry, Tampa was roughly equivalent to Green Bay on the ground because Tampa's defense also played quite well. But total yards, because Tampa kind of just gave up on it, 34 yards on the ground for the Buccaneers. It is hard to win football games when you are just not moving the ball at all on the ground. And that is what the Bucs had to deal with. Obviously, as you and Jordan Tresky covered on the post game or the pregame preview podcast, Tampa, like Green Bay, without some key receivers. I think fully healthy, Tampa's receiving room is much better, but Tampa was much more depleted than the Packers were going into this game. That certainly mattered, but still, you can't use that to take away from a Green Bay defense that still is going up against Tom Brady and still held him to 12 total points, even if he was able to move the ball, throwing for 271 yards, no picks. But the defense made enough big plays and enough little plays to really keep Tampa out of the end zone.
Right. And it definitely should be noted that a big chunk of that 271 came on the last drive. The last drive was 13
That
plays, 8.
prevent defense,
Oh,
man.
the prevent defense is driving
Ugh.
me driven me insane for a long time. But that last drive was 13 plays, 89 yards. So if you take away that big long drive, which obviously doesn't make sense in total football, but he still held under 200 yards up until the last drive of the game where Green Bay was just giving them everything underneath and ultimately end up scoring on it. Um, but regardless, just amazing job by the defense today. Two forced fumbles, no picks, but then three sacks of Brady for 20 yards, which was pretty big for them. Uh, Also, you mentioned earlier that the injury to Jair Alexander, we don't know anything yet. I'm refreshing Twitter to see if we do get something, but nothing as of yet. But stepping into his place was Keyshawn Nixon, who was absolutely just outstanding in his thrusted into the role he was put into. Seven total tackles, six solo, and a couple pass breakups. So he played a huge role in stepping in for your cornerback one.
Yeah, I don't understand. ESPN in the box credits him with zero passes defensed. I can clearly remember at least one in the end zone over the middle of the field where he definitely was there and I think broke up a play. I mean, I think you have to like really specifically knock the ball away or something. I don't know, but I think that's why people hate PFF. I get it, but something like PFF or whoever, whatever analysts you follow, there's so many great ones on the
Right.
Packers beat. The folks who watch the All 22 and drill down on a specific players, this is why like stats in football, especially for the defense, can be so misleading because you could look at this and go, no passes defense. He was having to make tackles. Like, was he giving up a lot of completions? He was awesome. I think he really played well, and not just like he gave you average play. I thought he played above average at the cornerback spot.
Right.
And again, in a game where the offense gets pretty much stopped after the first quarter and a half, the defense had to be great against Tom Brady without Jair Alexander. Like,
Right.
that's a huge moment for the young fella, and he really delivered.
Right. Absolutely. I think it was incredible. He even got a shout out from Matt LaFleur in the post game uh, press conference. He saluted. He quote saluted Nixon in his play too. So, but yeah, the defense was swarming and playing up to the task all game long. Going through the play-by-play here, the defense had one, two. We won't count the end of the quarter because it was one play, but then three, four, five, five total 3-and-outs throughout the entire game, which is really good. Like if you can do Tom Brady, keep Tom Brady off the field, and quit picking your defense apart like he's done his entire career, that's fantastic. So 5 3-and-outs, forcing punts is amazing. Overall, the defense forced a lot of punts this game, um, as did the Buccaneers defense. But regardless, Tampa punted 6 times with only one landing inside the 20. So that's a testament to where they're punting from, as well as the return team doing a little bit better job covering kicks.
Yeah, and I think, they'll probably get talked about the most after this game today for the few sacks, which it is, even with a patchwork Buccaneers offensive line.
Hmm.
It's really hard to sack Tom Brady. He really protects his offensive lines. He gets rid of the ball quickly, a lot quicker than even Rodgers, who can be lightning fast, but also can really hold on to the ball. Brady is good about that, but they got home. But I think really just the defensive line shutting down the running game. We've seen Leonard Fournette have some really big games against Green Bay and just generally.
Right.
He wasn't able to go anywhere, and the Bucks have to abandon the run game, as we mentioned, as well as putting pressure on Brady, a guy who releases the ball quickly, and just making sure this isn't necessarily the defensive line, but it felt like generally anytime there was something underneath, guys were getting to the ball and making good hits and either forcing fumbles, which happened a few times, or just getting a player down. And I thought like Quay Walker, who it's a good time to talk about him, I think
Hmm.
right now, he was great again, the rookie. But like his forced fumble, it was one of those plays. I mean, I shouldn't say one of those plays 'cause I thought it was a little unique.
Right.
He was wrapping up with both arms, but also like punching for the ball at the same time. So even if he doesn't knock it off, it's still like a very surefire tackle.
Right.
Sometimes it feels like a guy can really try to go and force that turnover and then end up kind of boofing the play, like missing the tackle or something.
Yep.
There was no chance of this. So I thought that play kind of summed up Quay Walker and the defensive front of just they got to the ball, they were aggressive in trying to make plays, but I don't think I mean, really ever at the expense of giving something up. Like, I don't think their aggression was ever, a negative for them in this game, which should be a great confidence booster going forward.
Right. Like I definitely see. I know what you're talking about. And there's definitely players who will go for turnovers and trying to like punch the ball out versus actually tackle them, and then ends up giving up a big play. Quay Walker was trying to do both, and that make the tackle. We had him wrapped up with one arm and then punched out with the other. Like that's a next level play that he's got already in his rookie year. So I think there was one mistake I only saw him have the entire game, and that was on that last drive, that prevent
When he
defense.
blitzed,
No, I was talking about when and on the prevent defense when he just lost Fournette. Like he was supposed to be taking Fournette out to the sideline, and it ended up being like a 10-yard gain or something. But he just like stood in the middle of the field, kind of had his feet locked, and then pursued, but ended up not making the tackle. And that was like the one that I saw. What were you thinking of something else?
No, I thought it looked like he was rushing on that play, and then he kind of stopped. It was just there was a broken
Yeah.
coverage there. Like something fell apart. Whether
Hmm.
it probably was his fault, but whether it was his fault or just not a communication issue in general, like
Right.
something fell apart on that play. But certainly he, it looked like it would have been his spot on the field where Fournette made the easy catch.
Right. But going back to Fournette, Jordan and I talked about it in our preview pod. We were like hoping he'd be out, not that he'd out, not hurt long term, but he's a hard runner, and seeing um him play the Packers against the run defense was not something we were looking forward to. But I thought the defensive line did a fantastic job plugging holes. Like as you mentioned, only 12 carries for 35 yards for Leonard Fournette, and even then he only had 35 yards on 5 receptions. Overall, just held in check. Like he was the most he's the person I was most scared of outside Tom Brady on that offense. And the Packers defense held him right where he needed to be to not have a huge impact on the game. And a lot of that comes from not being able to run up the middle, and he wasn't able to pretty much all night. And so, shout out Kenny Clark, Jaron Reed, Dean Lowry, all of them, everybody who kind of had a helping hand in keeping that run game stifled pretty much the entire game.
Outside of that one basically busted coverage we just talked about where Quay Walker wasn't in the right spot. So that was a reception for 17 yards for Fournette. Outside of that, he has 4 for 18
Yeah,
receiving. So you add that to the carries, and that is 16 touches for 53 yards outside of the one busted one. So
fine by me.
nothing there.
Yeah,
Nothing there all game. I mean, you even look at like the rushes, you'd probably expect this with only getting 35 yards, but his longest carry was 6. Like there
yeah.
was just outside of a play that was basically they left him wide open, which you can't do. It's still bad. It's not acceptable. But outside of that one play, you're talking about keeping a guy who in this game was clearly the Bucks' most dangerous playmaker because of the injuries, holding him to 53 yards and no big plays. And 17 yards isn't huge, it is big, but
Right.
outside of that, really like nothing outside of I think 10 yards was his next best reception.
Hmm.
That is like standout both defensive like game planning and knowing who you have to be aware of and execution from the players.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think they did a wonderful job in how they knew they wanted to attack Leonard Fournette this game, which was what we were looking for, given the receiving core being so depleted as it was for Tampa. Russell Gage ends up leading them in receiving yards with 87 on an incredible 12 receptions. He was apparently the only person Brady was targeting in the receiving game. But yeah, it was good. I think that you can live with that. Clearly, it was almost not being able to live with it because of how the offense performed. But Russell Gage, 12 receptions for 87 yards, a touchdown, and he lost a fumble too. That was, I think, I forget if that was the Quay Walker one or a different one. That was the second one, but I forget. It'll Perryman also fumbled as well. So overall,
Yeah.
just great, great stuff from the defense. And like we mentioned, the prevent on that last drive is something that I understand like why you do it. It's so that you don't immediately give up the long play or the chunk play. You keep giving your defense chances at making an impact play to not allow them to get a touchdown. The problem becomes when it's 2.5 minutes left against Tom Brady because he'll
Yeah.
take those 5 yard passes, those 7 yard passes, those 8 yard passes across the middle because that's what you're giving them. You can't let Brady do that because he's Tom Brady because he'll just make the right decision every single time. You can do
Yeah.
that against lesser quarterbacks in the NFL. You can't do it against Tom Brady.
Yeah, I think, this is a great strategy against the Jameis Winstons of the world, but Tom Brady is so perfectly content taking the boring throw every time. It's like we talked about week one, Kirk Cousins. Like, obviously, Kirk not as good as Tom Brady, but both guys who will just sit back and hit the open guy over and over if you let them. And certainly with that much time on the clock. If they had gotten the ball with like 40 seconds and had to go downfield, maybe even
Right.
40. I feel 40 even is a little much for me, but 3 minutes is like, yeah, I mean, if you can make, 8 yard plays, it's going to take you like a minute and a half off the clock, especially with the 2 minute warning. Like you just can't do that. But
Right.
the
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 Russell Gage fumble was Keyshawn Nixon.
mm,
The Brashad Perryman fumble was Quay Walker.
got it. That touchdown drive from the Buccaneers to end of the game was started with about, I think it was 3 minutes and like 15 seconds or something like that, which is just
3:04, but I think that's when the first play ends, so you're
yeah.
probably
I'm
right.
just doing quick math there. That it was 2 minutes and 50 seconds long, and there was 14 seconds to end the game. Um, when the Packers kneeled it down. So like just guessing,
Right.
so something like that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's 3 minutes and change is way too much time to play prevent defense against Brady. Like it's
Yeah.
even with the cast that Brady was playing with, if you're gonna leave NFL receivers and Leonard Fournette open to catch balls in space, they're going to be able to catch them. Like you need to pressure them in order to make them not look like they're NFL wide receivers, right? And they just didn't that entire drive. But it didn't matter because at the end of the game, they give up the receiving touchdown to Russell Gage.
He also, I think he had 5 of his catches on that one drive. The
Probably,
first 3 plays were all to Russell Gage.
probably. But so they score the touchdown and go for the 2 point conversion. The the
Oh,
first
the controversy.
the controversy, the the first touchdown or the touchdown play, delay game, maybe. I know that the whole like internal work of like you get a beat after it goes zero. The
So
Rodgers,
stupid, by the
it's
way.
what one, it's dumb. Two,
Yeah.
it should be challengeable if it's on a scoring play. Like they should look at it. Three, it's something that Packers have also benefited from because Rodgers does this all the time, so we can't
Yeah.
really be too upset about it because it's definitely affected us in not being called positively as well. But then on the 2 point conversion, they don't get it off, which
Yeah.
is huge because as Greg Olsen mentioned on
He
the
was
broadcast,
in.
he
Yeah.
was in. He had a full lane
It
and there
was
was
it was
like
up the gut to Leonard Fournette was the play. Or Fournette, by the way. That was what it was. We should explain if you missed the game or don't
right.
remember it. And it was you could clearly tell like it looked very good for the
It
Buccaneers.
did, and I think there might have been somebody there, but I don't think Leonard Fournette is not being held out of the end zone from the
Yeah.
2 yard line. It's just he's not gonna happen. But the late game penalty pushes them back to the 7, and the play is a sort of rollout from Brady a little bit to the right end and throws to Russell Gage, who, if I'm not mistaken, Ty, if you have it up, I can pull it up quickly. Tier two, the 2 point conversion was defended by.
Campbell?
That's who tipped it. I was trying to see who
Oh, it
had
doesn't even have it here. It
no.
just says,
So
yeah.
I think it was Gage again was streaking across the back of the end zone, and the cornerback, whose name I'm earnestly trying to find quickly here while talking, um, is covered, and it would have been a tough reception anyways. But Devondre Campbell, who is one of the better coverage linebackers in the league, and what made him stand out so much, he's big, he's tall, he's long, he's a lot of those basketball verbs like to talk about what makes a good defender. That's what Devondre Campbell is. Jumps, gets a hand up on it, tips it, falls incomplete to seal the win for the Packers. I was nervous about sealing it there
Yeah,
because
it was a perilous few
it
seconds,
was
that's
a
for sure.
right. It was the Packers had to go and um recover an onside kick, which they did. Nice job, Alan Lazard. Thank you for not
Yeah.
being Brandon Bostic. Um, but that was the end of the game for the Packers, and overall, just a really great stand from the Packers to do that.
I gotta say, since that first drive against Chicago, and myself and a few other people called out the Packers defense for talking a lot bigger than they've played, since that drive, this has been an elite unit, and that's why Green Bay is 2-1. I mean, they didn't have to be elite to beat Chicago, most likely, but
Right.
it helps, and certainly they had to be to win this game. That's why they're 2-1. Are they what now? Second in the North? Did the Vikings win?
Did the Vikings win? Some
I did not watch
some
Detroit, Minnesota.
BS.
Oh.
Detroit was up so late. They had the game wrapped up. They just needed to win the game,
Yeah.
and they didn't.
Still learning how to do that, Detroit
They
is.
st- they
Fun team, but they
I
don't
was
have that part down
I
yet.
was so annoyed. I was ready to come on this pod and be like, "Hey, those Detroit Lions tie, they're building towards something, aren't they?" But they let me down. So
Yeah. Well, second place in the NFC North, but tied for the best record in the North, and still obviously, the Vikings thing aside, there, and it is big for seeding purposes to beat Tampa because
Absolutely.
obviously you would hope that by the end of the year, Green Bay is one of those teams vying for the top seed, and with the rest of the NFC South, it looks like Tampa will also be, especially when they get healthier, will be one of those teams too.
Yep. Also, to make sure I give credit where credit is due, Darnell Savage was the man in coverage, and he was covering him pretty tight. So overall, just good stuff. So should we move to the offense? Regrettably.
Let's get it over with.
So as talked about during the game, again, if you didn't watch the game, the Packers started out hot on offense.
Perfect.
Started their first two drives, 10 plays, 75 yards, touchdown, 12 plays, 71 yards, touchdown. First one went to Romeo Dobbs, second one went to Alan Lazard. Then their third drive drove the field again, 6 plays, 60 yards. Rodgers throws a little in route to Aaron
Aaron
Jones right
Jones.
in front of the goal line. He gets stood up. Keep in mind this next part: catches ball, stood up, hit, fumbles. All happens within a second, second and a half.
Yeah.
Like happened real fast. It was hard for Jones to secure the ball that quickly, but ultimately fumbles. And they talked about it again the entire broadcast. That was the turning point in the game. It went from the Packers playing with confidence and playing aggressive and playing sort of how we want these Packers to play on offense very fast to playing scared on offense. They stopped taking shots on the field. Everything stopped working. It probably also helped or didn't help that that fumble probably gave the Buccaneers defense a lot of energy and a lot of confidence and able to and knew that they had that big impact on the game. And that's why they were so good the rest of the game. But um Tommy in the Discord and a bunch of people on Twitter were all talking about how the Packers were just playing scared. And I think this is, I don't want to say a calling card of Matt LaFleur because that seems a little harsh, but it seems like in all of our big losses where it's close, like especially in the 49ers game and then the playoffs last year, same thing with the Buccaneers game and we lost the championship game, you can just tell that they pucker. They just like try not to lose the game is what I'm trying to say. They don't play to win the game. They play not to lose. And in the NFL, you just can't do that. Like that's even before Matt LaFleur. This is a Packers thing too. They've always done, which maybe it's an Aaron Rodgers thing, but it's hard to blame him solely for play calling and things like that. But even like 2014 against Seahawks, that was a brilliant case of playing not to lose. And typically, when you play to lose,
Yeah.
you
Then you
lose.
lose. Yeah. And maybe they would have lost if, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans and everyone was in the game today.
Right.
They weren't. They won. It's not taking the win away from Green Bay, but certainly. So here's the difference. The first three drives, the pre-fumble, so up
Yep.
until that moment, 28 plays for 206 yards and 14 points. After the fumble, 9 drives, they ran 35 plays. So I thought, honestly, even before we get to the yards, which are sickening, to run 7 more plays in triple the drives, it just shows you
It's
they
bad.
could not stay on the field. Like they
No.
could not. It took them. There was technically a 4-play drive. It was because of a penalty they had to redo. They did not pick up a first down, basically, or they didn't advance the ball more than 10 yards for 5 straight drives. Then they did 4 plays for 18 yards, then 3 plays for 1 yard, 4 plays for 8 yards, then 8 for 37 was their last real drive.
Right.
Also, I'm discounting the very last one from this set of stats, the post fumble, because
Yeah.
they nailed it. I'm not going to count that
Oh
against
God,
them.
no, no.
So
Um,
9 drives after the fumble, which is like starting in the second quarter. 35 total plays. So they're running like 3 or 4 plays on all of them, except the very last one.
right.
97 total
It
yards.
was
After
bad.
picking up 206 yards in the first 20 ish minutes of the game, they picked up less than 100 over the whole rest. And literally 2 drives of more than 10 yards, 4 for 18 punt, 8 for 37 punt. Like, you just can't go cold for that long and
No,
expect to beat really good teams. Like,
no.
honestly, you can't even expect to beat mid teams. Like the NFL is pretty good right now. I think overall, like a team like the Raiders has not won yet. I mean, that's a talented team, even if they're not playing good football.
Right.
You just can't go this cold. You don't need to have, 50 points a game offense. Like clearly their defense is good enough to not need that, but you need more than 14 most of the time.
Right. And I think that what we were kind of just like touching on that is just that they got scared. The play calling wasn't there. They stopped targeting Romeo Dobbs. He got hit a couple late in the game, but they stopped really targeting him. Run
At
game
least down the
wasn't
field, it went back to
right.
like they're targeting him at the line of scrimmage,
Yeah,
which is
yeah, yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
maybe he can do something, but he can clearly run downfield
Right.
too.
It, in my notes uh for the game, I like take like first quarter notes and it's like notes by quarter. My first note for the first quarter was Dobbs. Weird what happens when you let your wide receivers run a route downfield. So like clearly just get him in like the normal wide receiver role, get him running routes instead of just running routes near the line of scrimmage. Yeah, he was really close to breaking one away on like a bubble screen. I forget what drive that was, but they're essentially one defender away from breaking it off big in a play like that. But like he's talented. He's got pure athleticism to be able to make plays like that down the field. Take a shot to him. Like I don't think he had too big of a I don't think he had a lot of plays where he was targeted more than like 15, 20 yards on the field. Yeah, his longest was 21, but I'm guessing he had some yards after catch after that. But I want
I've
to.
got ESPN stats info, at least from the first half. I'm trying to find the full game. This isn't Dobbs specific, but just the Packers.
Mm-hmm.
Rodgers averaged 2.9 air yards on completions in the first half when the offense was good.
Right,
Like even in the first half when it was like a couple shots that were more like slants, kind of probably like 5 to 7, maybe 10 yards were the longest.
right.
Even then though, it's still like they're just not throwing the ball downfield. It's worth noting, I mean, the Buccaneers have a great defensive line and
Yeah,
you don't want to hold the ball too long against them. But also like some play action, like there needs to be some more downfield presence than there has been for Green Bay, just
right.
generally.
I noted in the fourth quarter that the in the beginning of it when they're on offense, it was just check down city the entire second half. Like there was nothing open, which is maybe a coverage thing versus a game planning or like a game calling thing. But man, there was a lot of just 2 yard throws, 3 yard throws, which was evidenced by the all the three notes they had and all the stunted drives they had. Um, Overall, I think just like it was last week, it's a win. You take wins. It's a good coach's win because they have stuff to work on going into this week because they're going to need to work on it. Like obviously the Buccaneers game, even with all the weapons they were down, still was one of the tougher games we knew we were going to have to face. We knew going in that the Buccaneers had a good defense and that they were going to probably struggle against the run defense, which they did. Logan Ryan ends up picking off Aaron Rodgers again, which is like I think Jordan called it out in the pod too. He goes like Logan Ryan's still there. He gave Rodgers havoc in the NFC Championship game, so he is wreaking havoc again. Ultimately, not too big of a deal as they didn't score off of it, but it's one of those premier games against top level contenders off the board. We're 1-0 in that section of the season. We have three more to go against the Rams, Eagles, and Bills. Hopefully, we can go 4-0. 3-1 would be good. A split would be nice. Either which way, we got one.
And I like their chances against everyone except the Bills, who I just think it's going to be hard for anyone to beat the Bills. I mean, I know they just lost without some cornerbacks in
they're
Miami.
they're down a lot of their secondary. Mike,
Yeah.
shout out Micah Hyde, man, former Packer, former beloved Packer, out for the year. It
Ugh.
it sucks.
It does, and that might be their Achilles. Like they might have to make some personnel moves and roster moves to stay afloat because I think if fully healthy, they're much better than they looked against Miami. But that offense still, I mean, Josh Allen right now is very much that dude, and unlike Rodgers, is really able to like make plays all over the field and looks like a perfect fit in that Bills offense. Whereas I think there's still just a little bit of. I would love to see like stats on this. I don't know where if they're available I just don't think Green Bay does enough play action. Like for how good the running game is.
Yeah.
I mean, you just see, you look around the league and we watch other games. And it just feels like all the time, like fake run, obviously that's play action, and then like there's a quarterback rolling out and there's routes all over the field. It's just so hard to contain those. I just don't feel like Green Bay does that enough. And I don't think at this point it should be that much of an offensive line issue because we've got Elton Jenkins back. And one of the big stories of this game, Bakhtiari was also back and looked pretty
Right.
good in his snaps. I mean, again, we'll have the full grades and the analysis in the next coming days here. But the offensive line, I think, is certainly not a weakness anymore. If it's not one of the best units in the league, as those guys get healthy, it's certainly solid. And I think they showed that for the most part. I mean, it was still hard to run against Tampa, but that's just a great defensive line for you. I don't know. I just feel like that could maybe be incorporated more to help get these guys moving down the field a little bit.
hmm I don't think it's an issue per se. I think that this is the first week we've had a quote unquote healthy offensive line. Like week one, it wasn't going to be really an option. Excuse me. Wasn't really going to be an option just because they didn't have Jenkins or Bakhtiari. Week two, against the Bears, didn't really need it. And obviously they won that game handedly. This week, I agree that like a play action would have been nice, but that front seven of the Buccaneers is so good that it's hard to get that. Like even on his normal dropbacks, Rodgers didn't have a lot of time to throw in general, and they're making a lot of quick passes. But going forward, 100%, I'd love to see them set up the run. We've talked about this. Everyone's talked about this. Set up the run for the pass. And if you have a game where the runs actually work, that's probably some of it too, Ty, is that the run wasn't working well enough for play action to be any sort of useful. Like last week,
I
what about
think there's data that says it doesn't really need to be, that it works
right?
anyway. But
Okay,
it's a good point. The running game just was
right.
not thriving anyway.
And so, but yeah, going forward, when you have a good Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon game and that run is actually a threat, then I think it's huge if they can get play action going, which is weird because they were a play action team for a long time. Like they loved running play action, and I don't know if they've just gone away from it because of Matt LaFleur or if gone away from it just because of this year and the sort of carousel that is the wide receiving group and stuff like that. But yeah, that's a good point to see them work that more into their offense as the season progresses. Bakhtiari. I couldn't find snap counts anywhere. It's too short after the game. But overall, thought he looked good. Thought he looked good.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't. There was no point where it looked like he gave up a pressure. Again, maybe he did, but there was certainly no point, at least where I remember, where it was like a glaring, like, oh, Bakhtiari missed an assignment, or just wasn't there physically and messed up. And I don't remember any penalties for him either. So it seemed like he stepped in and did Bakhtiari stuff again, which obviously, the way we've talked about it, especially you, I think have taken lead on this. Just assuming he's not going to exist until we see him, like the
Correct.
way I treated Dario Saric before he finally came over for Philly way back when. But it happened. It finally happened. Even until the game started, I was like, I don't know. Let's see it
Yeah.
first. But thought he looked good. I came out at some points, but it didn't seem like any big red flags in that
Right.
avenue either. So we'll see. We've seen him play one game before, but I think if he's able to play like this again next week, then I'll really be excited.
He will officially exist for me if he plays next week against the Patriots at home. If he
Yep.
plays next week,
That's
then
not the London game yet, is it?
nope, the week after that.
The week after. Okay.
So if they if if he plays next week and like plays more than he played this week, then I can believe that he's healthy and on his way back to being the All Pro offensive lineman that he is. To touch on Bakhtiari a little bit, he was on a snap count. Rob Demovsky reporting with the press conference afterwards that Matt LaFleur knew David Bakhtiari wasn't going to be a fan of alternating series in his return, but he felt like with the Heat in Tampa, the long time off, and Josh Nijman deserving snaps, that it was the way to go. Well, we didn't want him going 0 to 60, which I totally agree with. Like, couldn't have argued for a better way to use him in his return. I can understand knowing, obviously not knowing Bakhtiari, but knowing what type of competitor he is and what he's done to get back here, that he would have wanted to play the entire game. I think it's smart that they didn't let him.
Yeah, that heat was no joke. It was talked about a lot throughout the broadcast. It was like 90 degrees on the field. We saw Lazard just absolutely throwing up on the sideline. Well, we didn't see it. Shout out to the three trainers or however many who had the towels all around him. Looked
Oh,
like,
we saw it. I definitely saw a
oh, I didn't
shot.
see it.
I
I didn't
saw
see
I
it.
saw a shot of
I
whatever
must have missed it. They did the job for me. They didn't do the job for you. But
the
the heat was real.
yeah, that's what happened when you're that hot and you're chugging water, chugging Gatorade, all that kind of stuff just to stay hydrated. That sometimes you just drink a little too much and get all that water and liquid sloshing around. It'll be tough to keep it down. But Ryan Wood said um that LaFleur said they'll see how Bakhtiari's knee responds to this game, and that he played 34 snaps. So there's your number for that. So overall, I think it was good.
He played then about half of the offense, I want to say.
About
Because
about
they it would have been 60. I shouldn't do math on the 63 snaps, I think. 63 plays for the offense.
I'm learning as well to not do math on the
Yeah,
podcast.
it's tough.
Shout out
It's
my
tough to put yourself on the spot.
shout out the score prediction from.
Yeah, you trying to work back and see what like a safety and two touchdowns is like. I was listening and I was like, I know it's harder on air, but you're adding single digit numbers together. This should not be.
I write for a living. I don't do math. Um, but yeah, going like briefly touching on score predictions because they were so bad from Jordan and I.
They didn't end up being that far off. It
Right.
looked like they were going to be very far off.
The number itself was close. The reasoning itself was there. We knew it was going to be um, a defensive game on both sides. No safeties for either one of the teams, so we fell short of that. Um,
It
uh,
seemed like
Jordan was
you were gonna get it with the drive that had Tampa starting on their own one, but
There were so many plays that were close too. Like,
I know.
oh, I was so ready. I was ready for it. But overall, um, moving on a little bit briefly, just to the defense. The
Oh
defense.
yeah.
They did well this week. I'm
Can I say after your guys' pod, every punt I was like cackling to myself, thinking about how the special teams coordinator for the Packers was just over on the sidelines, like I have no idea what kind of punt Pat O'Donnell's gonna do, but I'm here for it.
Listen,
Like
man.
just imagining Rich reacting over there, like, oh my God, he's going for the 10 coffin corner on the left. What a madman. I never would have called that, but he knows his leg better than I do.
You missed it. Rich Biasacha talked about in his post-scare presser earlier this week that Pat O'Donnell sort of captains the defense on the punt team, and that he kind of just lets him do what he wants to do. He knows well enough. He's been in the league long enough to know sort of how they want to punt it, and that's what
I'm just
happened.
imagining like, I don't know, some punter somewhere just in like heated discussions on the sidelines. Like, I can do the 5 yard coffin corner.
I can
No,
do it.
no.
No.
Aim for the 20. So funny, dude.
It's really funny, but yeah, Pat O'Donnell. Wait, I don't like that. I have to say this. 7 punts for 339 yards. That out he out punted the Packers offense.
By a lot.
Not a whole bunch,
Oh
but
no, not a whole. Well, what was it? No, yeah, it was okay. It was pretty close.
it
Like
was pretty
20
close.
yards. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but still, he out punted the Packers offense, having a long of 48, or I'm sorry, a long of 63, averaged 48.4. The big part of this though is that of his 7 punts, 5 of them were inside the 20. Like, there is something we talked about in the Discord. The Packers special teams actually flipped the field. Oh, it was that Keyshawn Nixon one where he caught it off the bounce, caught at the one,
On the one.
and
Yeah.
that was it. Like, and the Bucks went 3-and-out with the horrendous running into the punter call. But
Yeah.
they flipped the field.
His punts were actually insane. Do you want me to read to you where they all went? Because
Yes.
you're actually not even doing him justice
All right.
with that stat.
Do him justice.
First punt to the Tampa Bay 13 for no gain. Great tackle from Rudy Ford, who, while we're talking defense, continues to be just rock solid. Like, it hurt our hearts, the Micah Abernathy thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's been worth it. Like, he's made a lot of plays.
Yep.
The second punt to the 21 So the return brought it back to the 21. So the punt was to the 11.
Mhm.
So again, not within the 20, within the 21,
Right.
like pretty close. Then down by the two on the two by Keyshawn Nixon. Great, great play. Fair catch to the Tampa Bay 11 was the next punt. Then we've got a fair catch at the Tampa Bay 14. Then we've got a return for 16 yards, but only out to the 25. That was their best field position off of a punt the whole game.
Hmm.
Then the next punt was to the 11 and a fair catch. So literally 7 punts, none of them touchbacks, but none of them got past where they would have been as touchbacks. So he
Right.
dropped in all seven, accounting for the returns within the 25 yards of the field, from the 2 to the 25, and more were within 20 than between 20 and 25.
Right.
Like that's not just him. Like that's the punt coverage team too.
Yeah,
But
coverage was great.
that is just an all around, like it feels like a funny word to use, but that is dominant punting. It is. It's as good as you can do, pretty much.
Dominant punting is like I know it's obviously not, but it feels like a brand new sentence. Like yo,
It's very like Bill Belichick is going to watch this tape and be like, this is what football should be.
this is what football should be.
This is how I can win football games with Mackinac Island Jones right here.
Macaroni.
Yeah.
Yeah, coverage was really good too. If there's one thing we're going to talk about the entire season, Amari Rodgers needs to stop being afraid to field punts or
I
get
mean,
somebody else in there.
the way he got rocked, I could not believe when they had to redo the kick,
Right,
the BS running into the kicker call.
right.
I actually thought they put someone else out there because he got rocked on that
He
hit.
got
But
rocked.
after that, I was kind of like, I see why he does it. But yeah, I mean, the screenshots look a little worse than they are, I think. But there was one or two where he fair caught, and there was like a lot of space
There
around him.
was it was I think the second to last punt before that line of punts. It wasn't the one where they were backed up or anything, but there was one where he fair caught it and there was no Buccaneers on the screen.
No,
Like
yeah, it was tough.
he's got a couple bad ones, which like
Yeah,
it's he's learning and I don't know. I'm not gonna try and white knight Amari Rodgers here, but like he just needs to be a little better at his decision making on fair catching things like that because it doesn't hurt you when you're at like the 2025. But if he's fair catching with space at like the 8 or something like that, he needs to get 5 yards, get 6 yards out
yeah.
of it. Like it's better to be at the 10-11 than at the 5-6.
Yeah,
And
I mean it's a better mistake to make than like, the opposite, which
yeah,
is trying to return it and fumbling or something, but it's still like if all he's going to do is special teams. If he wasn't going to be a receiver in this game, I just don't think he
I
is
don't
without Watson or Watkins. It's
right.
confusing to say both of those. And he didn't did he get targeted? I don't even know
No.
if he had snaps,
He
honestly.
played I was gonna talk I was if it came up I was gonna touch on it. He got if he played more than one snap, I didn't see it, but his one snap came in the victory formation. He was out
Oh
there for,
God.
for the victory formation.
I mean, he's not going to do it. So that this is literally his whole job. Like it's
Yeah.
just you should just be better by now if this is all you're going to be doing
Right.
on a
It's all
football
he should be doing
field.
in practice and things like that.
Yeah, that's it.
Juwan Winfrey got
So
upgraded.
why I was going to say Winfrey got targeted on a real passing play,
A couple of them. There's two of them.
or two
There's
of them. Yeah, two of them.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Like it's if yeah. The point
Tyler
stands.
Davis got 2 targets in this. Actually,
Tyler
had
just
two
had a really
catches
good
in this
catch.
game. Yeah,
Good catch
like
and run.
I just we've just got to give up on the Amari Rogers as a receiver. It's just clearly at least not. I just don't think ever with this team. I just feel
No.
like they've given up on it. And again, if we're at this point in the depth chart with an already pretty weak receiving core,
Yep.
and they're using Tyler Davis and Juwan Winfrey instead,
Yep.
it's just that part is over. So at least get better at the kick returning. I mean, 2 returns, average 10.5 yards. That's good.
Yeah.
But there was more meat on the bone there.
Yep. I feel like kick returning and punt returning is one of those things that you just know how to do or you don't. Like it's something you learn as like a high schooler. Like
Yeah.
that you just have a knack for, and it's hard to get thrust into that position as like any sort of pro, just because it's something entirely different from the rest of the game of football. Like
Yeah.
it's just different, and then to get to have the eye for it to do it, I just don't think he has it. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what his season looks like because as we both touched on, he's not getting run as a receiver, and if some sort of injury comes down where they need depth somewhere, I could see him getting cut for depth put somewhere else. So
Yeah, I mean, it's just if your only job is kick slash punt return, and he didn't actually return any kicks, they were all touchbacks. Guess what? It was only what, one?
yeah.
No, two. There was a field goal and then a kickoff at
Oh
half.
yeah.
Um, yeah, that's not a lot of job security in this league.
No. So either which way, hopefully he gets better at it. Now that's like out of this week, that's like the one thing I was concerned about, or not concerned about, just have
Not overly pleased. It was
not
the one
overly
part of the
pleased.
it was the one part of the Wii fence where you're like, meh. Everything else though was like, oh hell yeah.
Yeah, like that kick where he got rocked, that'd have been great for his stats. It was a good
Yeah,
return.
that was
It was a
that.
good return.
That at least that is worth noting. I'm glad you said that because that it's not his fault that got called back. He should have
Right.
gotten credited for that.
Right. But alas, he didn't. We just
Yeah.
want to see more of that because he had
Hmm.
opportunities like that on other punts. So
Correct.
overall. Alrighty, anything else, anybody else you want to talk about? You want to talk about Rodgers at all? I feel like we do this. We've done this before where we just don't talk about Rodgers. It's the Giannis effect.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it was such an Aaron Rodgers game in a lot of respects. Like overall, very efficient. The interception, and I want to talk about Dobbs after this too. So
Okay.
this could dovetail nicely. The interception, he was heated, and it was it to Tunyon, I think,
It
and
was.
he
It was.
clearly got hit, and I think he got thrown off his route as the ball was coming out.
Yep.
Also, though, like how bang bang it was, I don't think the ball would. I think it would have been a pick anyway. Like
The
it
ball
just looked
wasn't
like
placed well.
no, it was like way too far. I don't know what kind of speed Rogers thinks Robert Tunyon has, but it was like way too far to the left.
Right.
And it was Logan Ryan, right, made the
Yep.
nice kind of deked him into thinking it was too high and then immediately comes down to make the play. So
Right.
I don't know if it was as tricky as the broadcast made it seem because he kind of just like ran straight forward when he saw the route, but
Yep.
it was a good play that he made, and obviously it caught Rogers by surprise. Felt more like a brain fart to me than a missed defensive pass interference.
I agree.
But otherwise, I mean, I think it kind of gets covered in talking about the play calling and the receiver performance. Like he hit pretty much all the throws you would expect, and just overall, I don't think was aggressive enough. And there's play calling and Rogers' performance are always going to be mixed to such a degree, but
Yeah. They go hand in hand.
overall. Yeah, it just felt like, yeah, of course he's gonna make all these throws. He's Aaron Rodgers, and we probably shouldn't take that for granted. But it
Right.
wasn't like a after the first two drives where he was very surgical. It wasn't a special game from him. It wasn't terrible, but he wasn't making that many plus plays again, especially after the first two and a half drives.
Agreed. I think you said everything that I wanted to say. Like just a lot of the stuff that got them there wasn't working after the fumble, which again, play calling, part of it, Rodgers, part of it. Just want him to. I'm glad if there's one thing I'm glad about again. Ball was spread around. Uh,
Yep.
Dobbs targeted 8 times. Cobb targeted twice. That Cobb catch and run for 40 yards was beautiful. Same thing with his other
Yeah.
catch and run, the one that was on the
Did
third
he
down.
get banged up?
No, I just think that
Just didn't get back to him. He played. I made a comp on Twitter. I don't know if you saw
I
this.
did see this.
He is like Buck's Wes Matthews right now in
I
terms
agree.
of like you can't go to him every time. He doesn't have that volume anymore, but
Yep.
just feels like he's there when they need him, and he just feels so dependable. Every Cobb play
Yeah.
has just been great. This I've made fun of him before for it's baked into the contract for Rodgers. He has to get X balls per game, but
Yeah.
he's played very well, and it's a shame honestly he only got targeted twice because he just makes plays. He's in the right spot. He's super dependable.
That 40-yard reception he had, I was yelling at the TV. I'm like, leave him alone. Leave him alone. He can't run that fast anymore. like the it reminded me of when Rodgers threw the touchdown over to Cobb over the Bears to win the
Oh
North.
man.
Like that was Cobb's speed at its pinnacle.
Yeah.
It's not there anymore.
No, it's not.
He's still very fast, but he's not peak Randall Cobb fast. And I think peak Randall Cobb fast turns that catch run of 40 yards into a touchdown.
Yeah,
But
he doesn't have like separate from the whole defense anymore. Now it's just
right,
like fast enough to get open.
right, exactly. So, but yeah, then Randall Cobb targeted twice. Al Lazard targeted 6, Tunyon 7, Tyler Davis 2, Aaron Jones 4, AJ Dillon 3, Juwan Winfrey 2. We're spreading the ball around, which is
Yeah.
what we want to do. A lot of that was pre-fumble, but regardless, it's still happening. It's like as long as one person's not getting like one reception, I'm counting that towards spreading the ball around, or like one
Yeah,
one target rather.
yeah,
Just because like it matters. It matters that you have all these options and that they're getting schemed into their offensive game plan.
yeah. I think and I know you touched on Dobbs earlier, and I think I was looking up a stat or something. Did feel a little bit like maybe the first of many big games for him. I
Mm-hmm.
think, really using this opportunity, Watson, whatever, I don't know how much he would have factored, but really Watkins also being out. And we know we've seen that connection work well. And I would expect when he gets back, Sammy Watkins will factor in again.
Yep.
But big opportunity for him to build that trust with Rodgers and prove what he can do.
Right.
And I think he did. I mean, he hauls in all 8 targets. So
That's
clearly, every time Rodgers looked to him, he made the play. He didn't, he didn't run the wrong route or drop it, either one. And I think really it was being on different pages that hurt him more than drops earlier. But
right.
neither of those things happened. He was dependable. He was integral in the 2 scoring drives. Obviously, one catching the touchdown, but it seemed like making plays on both. A huge game for him, and I think could be, and even with Lazard like healthy, but really like I think the heat got to, maybe that was factored in with Cobb too. The heat definitely got to some guys,
Yeah.
and apparently I saw a tweet the Packers locker room didn't have AC,
Oh,
which
cool.
didn't help. Yeah, I didn't know that was. I guess Packers just should shut off the heat in the winter. I think that seems fair. It can be 10 degrees in the other teams, the visiting locker room in Lambeau. Then
Unplug
that's
the heaters on the
yeah, yeah,
sideline.
yeah, yeah. Or just flip them the other way to cold.
They
But
set to AC.
yeah, but I think a huge game for Dobbs with Cobb out there playing, with Lazard out there playing, and Tunyon, who Rogers looks to a lot. For him to still lead the team in targets, receptions, yards, and tied for touchdowns, I think is a pretty big deal for him. And you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself, but there still is not that many plays where outside of not being on the same page, there's like something that you see like he can't do or he struggles with. Like I think
Right.
he has potential to be a very good wide receiver in this league.
Yep. Looking back at his year so far, he's got 14 catches in 3 games. I think he's on pace for just about 80-ish catches. That's huge. That's big for a
Yeah.
rookie receiver. Like the sort of the water line for like an all pro level receiver is 100 catches in a year. And
Yeah.
he's 20 short of that in his rookie year.
Yeah,
So,
and it's picked up a lot this week too. I mean, you could
yep.
see that number go up. I mean, it's impressive and it's great, especially that he's a 4th round receiver.
Yep.
This is a league though where rookie receivers, like if your rookie receiver sucks, you drafted Jalen Rager basically. Like
Yeah.
uh, hopefully not Christian Watson too, but you look around the league like right now, like guys like Olave, and that's just the one I'm thinking of at the moment. But there's a lot of Drake London rookie receivers who are finding success right away, and it just goes to show like skill position guys can really step in and be successful. But it's
Yep.
you still got to do it, and especially as a 4th rounder, really impressive stuff from Romeo Dobbs.
Right. Garrett Wilson and the Jets on the Jets
Yeah,
is what one of the other rookie receivers. Um, couple tweets to go through before we wrap up. Just awesome tweets. This is the energy we wanted to see from the defense and the play we wanted to see from the defense to back up the talk that they've been doing since training camp. Packers cornerback Keyshawn Nixon on the dramatic ending. Time to go home. We walked into their trap, took over their trap, and go home. Simple. Like,
hell yeah.
hell yeah. Uh, Devondre Campbell on what this kind of game against Tom Brady. This is from Ryan Wood. Last one was from Matt Schneidman. Devondre Campbell, what this kind of game against Tom Brady, even without his top bar receivers, means for the Packers defense. Quote, we don't need to play the Bucks to get no confidence. We know how good we can be. Perfect.
They do. I mean, they have been talking a big game literally since they got together before at training camp.
Yeah.
So that is true.
Um, and hilariously, Andy Herman, fellow Blue Wire Network, fellow Packers podcaster, stirring the pot jokingly, has a picture of Randall Cobb in the back of his helmet. 'Cause like on the white part of everybody's helmet, they have those like sayings now, and they like it's
Yeah.
like end racism and all the other sayings they
Right.
want. And it says Andy Herman, that helmet clearly Randall Cobb clearly wants a QB change because Randall Cobb's back says choose love. So all in all, really good vibes from
Yeah.
this week and the win. One more tweet to go before we, as a preview for next week, Mac Jones suffered a high ankle sprain, it seems. and could
Yeah,
miss some time.
he
So,
had to get carried like out through the tunnel and everything.
yep.
It was
I-
not looking good.
Ian Rappaport is reporting that MRI tomorrow. Um, Maybe we see Brian Hoyer as the Patriots quarterback next week.
Is that much worse for them?
I think it's a little worse. I
I'm
think
not even trying to take a shot at
I
Jones,
know.
but
I know. I think people sell Mac Jones short of what he is. I think he's fine. I don't think he's like awful. He's not,
do you know what Brian Hoyer's full name is?
I don't want to know, dude. He's
Axel Edward Brian Hoyer.
no, it fucking isn't.
Axel Edward might put up numbers next week,
No, it
man.
isn't.
What do you mean?
That's
Yes, it is. It
I.
says that on Google and on Pro Football
That's not a
Reference.
real name, dude.
Axel Ed.
Let's give out some cheese, man.
Hey, 53 touchdowns to 35 picks in his career.
Oh.
I always thought Hoyer was solid, but he has not played basically, and
Right.
he's not played meaningful football more than, I guess he played 4 games last year. He doesn't play
Yeah.
much though anymore.
No. So some cheese handout. I'm gonna throw you a curveball, given some stats you gave me. So
Okay.
a nice monster. Romeo Dobbs, Rizzo Douglas, Quay Walker, and Rashawn Gary. Now we talked pre-pod about our punter Pat O'Donnell.
Oh my goodness.
6 punts essentially inside the 20 with how he played. Do you want to bump him up to 2, or you want to keep him at 1? Because that's some dominant punting tie. Because I'm thinking of where does Pat O'Donnell get opportunities to have better games,
Yeah.
and I don't know
That
where.
it's that question versus should there just be a cap on punters because they punt?
Punting's important. It's clearly important.
It's important.
Punters' lives matter, Ty.
Yeah, I know. Um, it was a great. It was you would hope. I mean, there probably will be, but you would hope there's not many more games where he has to punt 7 times.
That's kind of
I
what
I think I'm okay with it because he literally did not miss at all.
exactly.
Every punt, and it started within the 20, and then most of them didn't get out of there. So I mean, I think yeah, as a punter, you can't do much better than that.
Perfect. So earning a nice, spicy, creamy pepper jack this week. Our punter, Pat O'Donnell. Devondre Campbell. Kenny Clark. We didn't talk too much about, but he had 2 sacks. And then Keyshawn Nixon, who
Yeah,
played outstanding in his fill-in role on both special teams and on defense. So, um, let me pull up the sheet here quick.
leaderboard time.
Oh boy, leaderboard time. I do. Before we get to that, um, I want to make a little bit of an announcement with the stats going out typically Mondays, Tuesdays. It's a little more difficult to get a good read on um who deserves cheeses over other players, especially on like the interior with like linemen and defensive linemen, just because it's tough to see each game live essentially how well they're playing. Like we want to give Bakhtiari one or want to give Nimmin one, but it's hard not to think about the plays where they get blown up or if they just don't hear about them at all. And so I think we are going to move the the cheeses and the handing out of the cheeses to first thing of the Thursday pod. That way we're not shorting anybody and making basically giving everybody their due diligence
Yeah.
on all this stuff.
Well, yeah, it's another one that could have qualified if we did it this way. Eric Stokes, who we joked
Yep.
about in the Discord, like I think he finished with what, a tackle. Like we didn't hear his name at all.
Yep.
Like he just wasn't, which typically for a cornerback is a very good thing. But in these stats, like if he was out of position, if he got beat, like we might have missed it. I don't think he was just with the way the defense played, but would love to just see some data on that just to confirm versus, a guy who's really like probably not even pictured a lot of the time because the plays just aren't going to him, which probably means he was defending very well, but
Yep.
maybe his receiver fell over like every route. Like it's hard to know live and right after the game. So yeah, I think it's a good move. But yeah, a guy like Stokes who probably deserves a cheese, not getting one this week again, just because he was like so good, he just wasn't even involved in plays.
Right. I think like that sentiment was the main reason we wanted to move it to Thursday, because if it ends up being the fact that he didn't like allow any yards or anything like that, he definitely deserves to be recognized. I just don't want to hand one out without knowing because I we just don't know, and so
Yeah.
that'll be that moving forward. So thank you guys for understanding. To go through the list, please give me a little bit of time because the sheet is not organized top to bottom. So we're gonna do our best here. Leading the way with 3 is Aaron Jones from last week, and then there's a gamut of players at 2: AJ Dillon, Quay Walker, Rashawn Gary, Jair Alexander, Aaron Rodgers, Preston Smith, Pat O'Donnell, Devondre Campbell, Keyshawn Nixon, Kenny Clark, and then players with, oh, I'm sorry, Aaron Will Douglas is in there too with 2. And then players with 1: Romeo Dobbs, Elton Jenkins, Sammy Watkins, Mason Crosby, Eric Stokes, and Zach Tom. So we will be updating that as the season goes along. We'll get the Substack up and running for for the cheese board, and so you guys can take a look at all that and see the graph and things like that. So, um, looking forward to next week, Patriots. Week before the London game, that'll be interesting. See what how we're doing injury wise going into next week. I'm hoping to see Christian Watson and Sammy Watkins on IR, so he won't see him for a few
Yeah, we
weeks,
won't see
for
him
a
for a
month,
couple
at least a month.
weeks. Yeah.
So Christian Watson is really the only big name we want to see. Make sure Bakhtiari's playing,
Yeah, I
stuff
was
like
gonna
that.
say
So,
Bakhtiari is the one, but he's been back for a little longer now, but
right.
I just would like to see him and Jenkins both play in the next several games. Really, for the rest of the year, it would be great.
Ideally.
Yeah,
Alrighty, so thank you all so much for listening to another episode. We are 2 Victory Mondays back to back weeks. We have absolutely love to see that. Leave a review.
yeah,
Leave a rating. We love all of these things. We love hearing from you guys. Fill out the Discord form on gspn.info. Check out Ty, I believe, is going on a podcast that will be in your feeds today, as in Monday, or possibly
yep.
Monday, about Media Day. And
Bucks Media Day.
yeah,
Yeah.
Bucks Media Day. So with basketball coming up again soon, Brewers are winding down. The hopefully not, but uh,
Let's just move on.
but
Listen to Cruising for a Bruising.
listen to all the pods.
They need the support
Yes,
right
they
now
do.
because the Brewers are giving them absolutely nothing.
Yeah, they should have swept the Reds and didn't. But
Yeah.
the last 3-1 isn't too bad, but it's not what we wanted. Anyways, thank you all for listening to another episode. We'll be back in your podcast feeds later this week to preview the Patriots against the Packers back at Lambeau. Ty, thank you so much, buddy.
Numac, thank you.